This is Black Woman CEO. Welcome to the only podcast dedicated to giving you the raw and real experiences of successful Black women entrepreneurs. Yes, girl, we're talking about the behind the scenes strategies of what it takes to increase in your profit, power, and purpose. I am your host, Quanisha Green, and I invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's show. Hey there. This is Quanisha here, your host of the Black Woman CEO podcast and the founder and CEO of Black Woman CEO. So excited to come with another excellent Black Woman CEO expert. Hey, Kimberly, how are you?
I'm doing well. Hi, Quanisha.
Thanks. And I should say your full name, Kimberly Mays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That way. And I really love that Kimberly's here. Kimberly and I met, oh my God, I don't know, like a couple of years ago, maybe 3 to 4 years ago, when I was a business coach for another community. So it's been really great. And also you participated in some of our Black Women CEO programs. Kimberly's helping us at this time to upgrade our website, right? So we worked in different capacities, and we'll let you know when the cool website is up. It's going to have all these cool features. I'm really excited. New color scheme, all this good stuff. But I'm so happy to have Kimberly here because it's been exciting to see her journey. So I love when we can have, I like to call it CEO on the rise, but you've also achieved CEO. As you all know, the Black Women CEO podcast is really about giving you the behind the scenes strategies of women who have made multiple 5 figures, 6 figures, and 7 figures in their business. And so thank you for joining us, Kimberly.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we are going to dive right in now that I told everyone who you be to me, but who you be. That's always our question. How would you describe yourself beyond what you do?
Yeah, so how I would describe myself beyond what I do is I love to make things simple. So I am a speaker, a teacher, and I'm also a geek. So when I say a geek, I mean I love all things digital marketing. I've been in digital marketing or just web design since late 90s. So I was a bored teenager. And so it's just about turning something that I've been passionate about from a young age into a business. So I would say all of those things, but as of the past, I would say 1 to 2 to 3 years, I have taken myself from behind the computer screen, and now I love speaking, being on stage, teaching, and just really breaking complex things down for people so that they can understand some things about their business.
Awesome. I love that you help people really grasp the technology part and also like the marketing, like how we show up online, right?
Yeah.
Because so many folks struggle with that. So you kind of hinted at this and talked about it, but what would you say your mission is? And can you tell us more a little deeply about the work that you do?
Yeah, so my mission is to make coaches, professional speakers, thought leaders, authors, anybody in the influencer space or the coaching space really stand out online. And that is what I strive to do. So my business, Foolishly Creative, was founded in 2016, and it started out as a web design company. We still do web design, by the way, but we've morphed into doing digital marketing, email funnels, some courses, and branding, of course. So it's not just me sticking with one thing. It's about seeing what people need next and seeing how I can fill gaps where I see them.
I love that you're working with experts in that way, and always not the tech savvy folks when they think about how to show up online. So what is your area of expertise? You kind of said it, but what does that look like a little bit more deeply, or why do you feel like it's important for folks that have someone like you on their team as an expert?
What it looks like is I am a very detail-oriented person. I like things that people don't like to do. So sometimes my favorite clients are the technophobes. I love technophobes. I love people who are like, I don't understand this. Just go in and figure it out and let me know how it works. Those are my favorite people because they tend to be so boisterous in other areas that they don't want to be working on a website, a landing page. They want to be on stage. They want to, do their coaching calls, their group programs. And so now I'm just like, okay, I'm happy with my Visio flow chart, my diagrams. I can't wait to show it off to them. I'm like, oh yes, I'm going to load up Loom and show them all this stuff. And then I get a response. That's nice. Just build it now.
So that sounds like me. I'm like, yes, those code colors are great. She's probably like, you know how hard I worked on this?
Yes, but I really I really enjoy that. I really enjoy like the trust that people have in me to just do the work. So those are things that, I just want to take that off their plate. 'Cause I see sometimes people, they want to get things so perfect and they won't promote themselves until things are perfect. And I see that a lot, especially on a lot of my discovery calls. I talk to people and they're like, yeah, my website just looks terrible. I just didn't tell anybody about my business this month. And I'm like, yeah, like it doesn't matter, but in a way it does matter to the business owner psychologically. So what I want to do is take that off their plate so they can feel happy about, showing up, making offers and putting themselves on social media and just putting themselves out there.
Yeah, I see that all the time in many areas that I've coaching, even when I worked for, did coaching in another company while growing Black Women CEO, that perfectionism is such an issue. And I always tell people, like, that's not a revenue generating activity, right? You don't need a website to initially make money. You want to have one, right? Because it's just like location, location, location. You want to have that online home that is a representation of what you do. But that perfectionism really kicks in. And I often tell people, like, okay, what's good enough? What's an excellence or thinking outside the box? But eventually, right, they need to kind of have an expert like you. And one thing I love that you said is that you're operating in your zone of genius. And we all have, it's like you operating in your zone of genius allows people to operate in their zone of genius. And what may be difficult for someone else comes easily to you. And that's what I love about when folks really get to that level of their expertise, where they're like, hey, I know what I know my kind of like path. This is my, zone of genius. And, that's just what it is. And everybody has their own. So it's not about, people, oh, you're not tech savvy, what's wrong with you? It's like, okay, this is what it is. And you allow people to kind of be the star of their show while you handle some of the other aspects of how they show up online. So I love that part. So I know you talk a lot about in your work, like how to get noticed as an introvert, especially when you're like the quietest person in the room. And so what does that look like? Can you explain kind of like why is that important to focus on that too? And how has that come up from you? And do you have any other tips? Like, I'm an introvert. I always say with extroverted tendencies, nobody ever like believes that I'm an introvert. Like my Myers-Briggs, the I is like extremely like strong. Right? So can you explain that? And maybe for the listener, share what an introvert is. Like, how do you define that? And how does that relate to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I'm going to also say what an introvert is not. So when people think of an introvert, they think of somebody who's shy. And that's the biggest misconception is like, oh, I'm scared. Like shy is that's a fear. And so introverts can be shy, but that doesn't necessarily mean what introversion is. Introversion just means your energy levels and how your energy gets managed through your engagements with other people. Extroverts get really charged up when they're in large crowds, when they're at events, conferences, networking. So those people have no problem stepping into like a networking event. It's like, hey, y'all. And by the end of the day, they're like, oh my God, being alone is draining. So that's extroversion. But introversion is a little different. Introversion looks like, yes, you want to go to that conference, you want to go to that networking event, that social event. But as you spend time there, it drains your energy so much that you have to kind of budget your energy. So when you go home, then that's when you recharge. So that's what it feels like. And I think a lot of times people feel like they have to be this boisterous person and they feel guilty if they feel tired or they don't want to do all these social things. And really, I think it's just about learning how to manage your energy. And as an introvert, I had to learn that because when I first opened my business, I was in community with a lot of coaches, a lot of speakers, and these people would just jump on Facebook Live just every 5 minutes, and I didn't understand that. And I'm just like, what is wrong with y'all? Like, like, why are you doing this all day long? And I would be tired at the end of it. I'm like, okay, is there something wrong with me? Because that was just like not my thing to do. But I always talk about introversion because I feel like a lot of people hold themselves back because they're not charged by that. But, we really have a lot of strengths, a lot of things that we can bring to the table. And a lot of things that we do best alone when we're charging up could be the things that move the needle in our business.
I love that because actually this is probably where I met you. I was doing, I used to staff a 3-day event as a business coach, part of the sales team with that. And I would literally like be no good to anyone for like 3 days after that. Like I had to take the 3 days and eventually I learned like I'm staying that because you sit in that Sunday. I'm staying the extra day in a hotel so I can recover. Then I would block out my schedule for 2 days
Hmm.
after. So I love that you really defined what introversion, excuse me, is. That is not shyness, right? Like that's a whole different thing, or like social anxiety. Like that's not what introversion is about. It's about energy management. And I know I've had to, and I always tell people that's my number one challenge is energy management, because I can show up and play full out, and then it's like, okay, I need more buffer time. I think at introverts too, we have to, like you said, we have these examples of coaches and stuff, and they're probably, many of them are probably extroverts. And then we think we have to operate in that medium, or that's what a successful coach does, or that's how marketing looks, that's what showing up looks. But we also need to think about, what is our kind of personality and energy management, and build that in. So do you have any tips on, how an introvert can effectively like manage their energy or their business, or like with you the digital marketing, so they don't burn out?
Yeah, so some of my tips are when it comes to networking, be really discerning in the types of events that you go to. So if it's kind of like an open network thing where it's like, oh, we're going to go in a bar and just talk to each other, that's not where you're going to find me because that's tiring for me. So I like to go to events where there's an agenda. I think we do really well when we know what's coming next. So we can say, okay, well, from this time to this time, I'll have some time to go take a walk or whatever. And so I like things with agendas. I like things that are structured, planned activities. Those are things I think we do best instead of just like kind of a free for all bar. I think we tend to, that's overwhelming for me. And then when it comes to just showing up digital marketing online, a lot of people really don't like video. A lot of people really don't like lives, and I used to be that person. So even though like I can go on camera real fast and just do it, it's because I have just built up the stamina for it. But when you're first starting out, or even if that's something, an area of struggle, I would say pick the times that work for you. So if you're a morning person, do all your content creation in the morning. There's tools out there now that you can actually schedule lives. You can record it in the morning and schedule it to be live like at 3. So that could work. You could do your videos, batching. Sometimes I do that. I'll just change my shirt and do a new video.
I love
Yeah, I do that. And I tell people I do it because sometimes it looks like I'm on all the time. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. But the message and the value that I'm giving is still the same, even though I do it a different way. So I don't mind sharing that secret that that's something that I do and it doesn't take away from what I do. So I think it's just really understanding your energy levels. And then also when I do my meetings and my calls, and this is something that I kind of broke my own rules this week. I had 4 speaking engagements over 48 hours, but I'm not going to do that again. But it's about
like
it's about even how I have my calendar set up. You can do this in Calendly or Qt or whatever. If you need that buffer between a sales call, if you need a day to kind of read over what they submitted and you need a day to kind of prep for that, don't be afraid to give that to yourself. You don't have to be instantly available to anybody who needs to meet. You can just say, okay, well, here's my calendar. I have such and such days available. Let me get my prep time in. And you may even want to schedule some buffer around that. So if you need to take a break, then you could do so as well. Because I know I need those breaks. So those are like little tips that I use to kind of run things.
So I'm doing it right, everyone, as an introvert. This I'm saying here, like, okay, I do that, I do that, I do that. But I do break my rule too much. I'm like, oh, I have 4 days of calls. I'm like, why did I do that? Because I'll go change Calendly or something. I'm like, well, I have more client calls. I should add a day. Or I've been trying to block out. I also learned that I'm an empath, right? Because I take in so much of people's energy and like reading intuitively. So I blocked out the last day of the month at the beginning of this year. We're kind of doing this recording 2020, not to date it because it's evergreen content, everybody. Not until this month when I was like, I'm actually taking my week, because I kept compromising it. So I think part of that, the buffering or scheduling, like I always say, my sane self set this up, so I need to honor it. My sane self was like, your introversion is here, your empath is here, we need these buffer times. So that's one thing I would encourage, like do everything that Kimberly said, but then also honor your schedule, like honor these things, because if you don't, it will lead to you burning out or not feeling great. And then another thing about what you said that came to mind was, I'm like, that's also great for parents, right? So no matter if you're an introvert or extrovert, I think often, or let's just say caregivers, right? Because some people right now, many of us are that sandwich generation where we're taking care of, parents as well as, children. So whatever that looks like, I think if you are a caregiver in any aspect, that can also be draining of your energy, or you don't have that private time to recharge. And so I also loved what you said of that, you have control over your schedule. Like, think ahead about this and set up systems and processes that allow you to have time to recoup, or to, maybe only do calls on one day, right? So that you can work on some other aspects of your business. So I think that's a great strategy, in general, not just for introverts, but also people who feel like they have a lot going on in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And, because I broke my own rules, like that night, I fell asleep at 7 at night and I was just useless for like the entire, half of the day. So that's just something that can happen as well, too.
And you can make it up, folks, because like, you can do those 4 days and you're like, oh no, I'm taking off. Like, I'm taking a long weekend because I did that. So even if you don't plan ahead, you're like, wait a minute, I'm going to just take off.
Yeah.
Because that was too much. So thank you for sharing that. And I know that's going to be helpful to a lot of folks who are the introverts in the room. So let's go more into like more of your journey. So how did you come to own your role as an expert and a CEO?
Yeah, so I kind of it took a little while for me, but when I first started, I said I just want to do websites. That's it. You would need a website. Yes, no, okay, pay me. Let me get your website done. And I had to learn that business does not work that way. Not only is there a bunch of inner work, but there's just a bunch of relationship building as well. And I think for me, like I learned that you're not just what you deliver. Like, for example, like I do web design or I did websites. They're not just getting a website. They're getting a home for their online business. They're getting, confidence to promote themselves. They're getting clients, they're getting leads. So knowing where I fit in helping someone else kind of led me to my status as CEO. And then knowing that I needed to build a team, that was vital because I now work with copywriters. My partner, he does like podcast production, logo design, all of that. And then I have a developer who does like behind the scenes development stuff. So without people to support your business, it's very, very hard. So I think it's about learning how to delegate, knowing what your strengths are, your weaknesses are, and just kind of where you fit in your bigger picture and knowing your why. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but that's really like everything that just came rushing in at me over the years.
No, it's a thorough answer, right? That's part of why we do this, so people know like what that. And one thing that I heard you say is that you started to understand the full value of your work, right? It was like, oh, just web design here, just pay me per hour. It's like, no, I'm helping you to build your confidence. This is helping your business, right? Your branding, how you show up, how people connect with you. And so that's so important to pricing too, because when we really start to understand our value, we can price at a level that's a reflection of, right? We move from hourly to really thinking about what's the full impact and package that I offer, and then charging for those results and the outcome, y'all. So I wanted to pull that out, that if you heard Kimberly's journey, she started to understand the true value and outcomes and impact of her work in that way. And just thinking about your pricing, you don't have to say exactly what it is, because y'all can schedule a strategy call to see what she can do for you, right? But did that change your pricing just when you started to realize, like you said, that value, and then how that impacted you as an expert and growing into your CEO role?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that pricing is one of those things that you really need to feel comfortable with, because you can either learn from people telling you, yes, please charge accordingly, or you can learn the hard way. And the hard way is some ways that I've learned where I've undercharged and I felt some type of way about it. And I had to check myself, and I'm like, Kim, you don't deserve to feel angry. This is the price you charged and you need to honor it. So as you're doing the work, you know better next time. And I want people listening to kind of skip that phase, because that's a painful lesson when you're undercharging. And when you fully know your value, people are my best clients will, understand the value of the services that I bring. And same thing goes for like all businesses. So don't be afraid to ask for it, because then you'll do better, because you'll feel better about it.
Yeah. So if you're feeling resentment, and sometimes it's not resentment at the person, right? But you're like, why did I do that to myself? Or you're in it and you're like, whoa, I'm doing way more.
Yeah.
Or that you see like, I should have charged way more. And that's usually, I would say those are like the symptoms that tells you like you have to change your pricing, right? And once again, that, like you said, it's kind of like an anger and resentment. And I like to say, like you said, don't have any, like, you don't have to self-criticize yourself, but it's just an indicator, right? That it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I have to do something differently about this, and hopefully maybe invest in support to do that. So with that, how did you decide to start your business? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I was in corporate, and I've been in corporate up until the early this year, and then I went full time. So I started my business because I wanted something of my own. I wanted to create my own stuff. And what it looked like for me as I immediately invested in a business coach, I didn't go at it alone from the beginning. And, I had that support. And I think even if you have the support, you have to learn how to let people help you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that was kind of a slow boil for me because I was so independent. I was like, nah, I got this. I am who I am. It's like, I'm not doing that touchy feely stuff. I'm not, I'm not doing that woo woo stuff. I'm a geek. I'm a coder. This is what I do. And I had to kind of say, okay, well, it's not about being woo woo. It's about knowing that you have to build relationships and you have to solve problems. And I think through me starting my business that way, it was slow at first, but then I think about maybe a year later, I really had something where I could say, yeah, this is working.
And that's, I think a lot of folks are great at what they do, right? You have this
Mm-hmm.
expertise, like you said, I'm a coder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, and some folks have said this on the other podcast episodes, their profession, they're professionals, they mastered their craft or have been, a lot of, as highly educated women who are in our community, but then they realize like, oh, wait, I have to develop as a CEO. And that's a totally different journey. Like you said, that's when you kind of maybe have to get into the woo woo and
Mm-hmm.
mindset, examining yourself. And the process just lends itself to that. You realize like, wait, I just don't need to know business strategy. I also have to think about like my self concept and who I am beyond that. So that's kind of what I heard you say.
Exactly.
So can we go deeper into that, maybe, like, and just in general, like what were some of the early challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, some of the early challenges that I faced were really just, I think, even talking to potential leads and clients, right? Just not saying, okay, what do you want? All right, this is good, it's going to cost, but really taking time to really understand where they're coming from, how they feel, taking time to talk through that. I wanted to skip all that together because, like you, I'm an empath, but it shows up in a different way. I'm like one of those empaths, like, nope, keep your issues over there. Don't want it. It's gonna affect me. Leave me alone. I was kind of like that. So, I just had to learn to. Well, first it was that because just building that connection, and then also just working on myself, my own mindset. I went into it. I didn't know mindset was a thing. You know. And I think a lot of people are learning, okay, your mindset is definitely a thing. It's not just your business, it's your life. So I had to learn how to do a morning routine. I had to learn how to do journaling. Never journaled before, really. And so I just see it's tied into so many different facets that you have to be ready for the ups and downs and the swings and know that it's part of the journey and it's going to be okay.
Once again, that I always call it mastering yourself to master
Mm-hmm.
business. And one thing that was really great about you is that when you were open to receiving help, I think for Black women that can be so hard because I call it the strong Black woman syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
How we're
Yeah.
socialized is to be independent and I'm gonna figure it out, or if I wanted to go right, I got to do it myself. And so we look to figure it out. It's like, oh, I'm gonna read all these books, I'm gonna do this, instead of investing in someone who can help you have a straight path to kind of see, okay, like, hey, Kimberly, this is where you need some work and different things like that to get to where you want to go. So you talked about this a bit in the introversion part, as well as just now when you talked about your challenges. So how have you integrated work and business, life, self-care, and family?
Yeah, so how I've integrated is schedule management. I don't work Sundays. I don't have any appointments available on Sundays and Saturdays. I have it in the mornings because Saturday mornings for me, I just keep that open for anybody who needs to speak with me that has a full-time job, as well as Tuesday and Friday nights, just as a courtesy. But it's kind of knowing when to shut off. And I wouldn't say I've definitely arrived in any capacity there. I would just say that this is something that's still a work in progress. So now I officially have office hours, which I'm really excited about. And then just working in, I know I can't travel right now, but when I can travel, like I was in Japan, I was able to do some stuff there with my tablet. So I think it's just having a system and having a plan for how you're going to do everything. And I still make time for friends and family, and I have fun. So I'm kind of enjoying things.
It's great that you've been able to incorporate that. And that's also the beauty of a kind of independent, location independent business. And it sounds great that you figured that out. And just to clarify, as of this recording, we're in the middle of coronavirus. So when Kimberly says, if you were listening, like, why she can't travel, that's probably the reason why. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So the world is dangerous. So stay. I try not to date it, but I think it's so important to be like, we're doing this in the middle. And that's actually really important. Like, we can still build our businesses. And I think the way, at least I set it up, and I think yours very much mirrors that even in this world pandemic, we've been still able to, at least for me, and maybe you can share what your experience is. Like, my business hasn't changed. It's actually been growing in that way and all this. So how did you navigate that with this major change that's happening in the world, and what have you seen kind of going on in your business, or how did you face this challenge? Probably maybe a better way to say that.
Yeah, so my story is actually really wild because I resigned right before stuff hit the fan. So, like a week later, everything shut down. I was like, oh my God, what did I do? So I think it was a scary time because we just didn't know what was going on, what was happening. And I think I needed to sit and kind of say, okay, it's all right to sit in this for a minute because this is weird and scary. But then afterwards, I said, okay, well, let me try some new things. Let me really put myself out there and see how I can now take all those canceled conferences and increase my exposure online. So I started a podcast. I did that, and the response was overwhelming, so that was really cool. And then I just started applying for speaking engagements, being on talks, and really having a routine. Even though my schedule is different and, they wanted us to stay home. So it's just getting up, getting dressed. That's important. If you're a home-based business, get dressed. Wash your face, brush your teeth. You don't have to put on like full face of makeup, but just act like you're going to work. Act like you're going to work. And then, at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever time, and it's just like, okay, well, I can work overtime or these can be quitting hours. So I think having that consistency is is goal for me. Now my weekends feel like weekends. So today actually, I don't want to date the recording, but today actually feels like a Thursday. So, that's pretty cool.
That's great. And part of what I heard you say, and I think it's so important for people who work from home, is that we sometimes think like, oh, I work from home now, I can just get up when I want to. But it's like, no, you still need to do work and show up consistently. And I love that you didn't shrink because of what happened. You actually increased your exposure. And one great thing about that, everyone, is like, you should do the opposite of what the world is doing when you think about your business, because so many people were stressed and worrying, and rightfully so, right? But particularly entrepreneurs, a lot of people shrunk. And so the people who did show up really stood out, right? And so I'm glad that you still served your community in a more, I guess you can say, expanded way, and that still helped you to attract business, right? And captivate clients in that way. So I know you said the routine as part of helping you to be effective. So how else do you kind of set goals and execute and stay focused?
Yeah, so by no means, I'm still a work in progress in a lot of the stay focused areas, but just setting goals, I like to do stuff. I like to have weekly goals. I'm a big proponent on weeks. So Sunday, that's my day of rest. I write out what I want to accomplish in the week. And then as I do my daily planning, I started to do my daily planning the night before because I don't like to go to sleep with stuff on my mind. So I'll look back and see the goals that I set for the week to see, what can I do now to achieve this goal tomorrow. And I do stuff like that. And sometimes I meet all the goals. A lot of times I do. And then sometimes I don't. But it's okay as long as I have something to work towards. And then when I start doing my weekly planning, I also look back at my monthly goals to say, okay, what can I do this week to achieve the goals that I have for the month? And so it kind of like, if I go backwards and I plan a month, it's like, okay, what did I have planned for the quarter? So I do it that way. And I find that that just takes a lot of stress off than thinking, okay, well, what to do today? Let me try to fill up my calendar with some busy work. It's that kind of stuff that works better for me.
I actually like that week by week, because I think sometimes we set goals like, oh, in the year, I want to hit this revenue number. I want to do this. And we don't necessarily set milestones, or the milestones are then per quarter. So I love that you're looking at, the weekly aspect of what you're doing. And it gives you even time to evaluate and then change things faster. If you're like, okay, this didn't go right in the week, but I need to attack this differently. So I really like that weekly aspect of planning, and that you kind of do it on your rest day, so you're not even like stressed on Monday like, oh, what am I doing this week? It's like, think about it. Sounds like you really give yourself the space to not, I call it a CEO date, to have your CEO date that way. You're doing the evaluation, reflecting, seeing what went well and didn't, and then setting a new, or I would say tweaking your course of action so that it aligns for where you want to go, everyone. So Kimberly just gave you maybe a whole different way of setting goals and focusing and executing that way. So if your way hasn't been working, consider doing a weekly plan and hitting those milestones that way. So thank you for sharing that. So as we kind of go into the closing, one thing I want to ask you is, what is one piece of wisdom, and you share so much, but that you would share with a woman who is frustrated building her business and desires to become that rock star CEO? Or another way to think about this is, what do you wish someone told you when you started this journey?
Yes, absolutely. So I have like the biggest piece of advice that I wish that somebody would have told me. You don't have to learn and consume everything all at once. I have purchased courses that I've never completed, books I've never read. I just did the most because I was thinking, okay, well, I got to know everything. I got to know this marketing and that. And I say the information and knowledge is just so readily available when you need it, or there's also a person or a resource that you can tap into with it. So don't try to learn everything, and avoid the shiny object syndrome. Know when to keep scrolling, especially if you're on Facebook. And it's like, it'll be okay if you can't take every single course or every single thing. Maybe some things are not even for you to learn, like copywriting. I'm not trying to learn that. I hire copywriters because that's just not my area of expertise. So I just say, study what you're good at, and then kind of outsource the rest, or just leave it be and just have that knowledge there when you need it.
I love that you don't have to be the chief everything officer, right? Sometimes I like to say chief excellence officer, and part of that excellence, and one of the roles of a CEO is to duplicate yourself, right? And build a team. So it's so great that, like, once again, is that zone of genius, and it's like, okay, I don't need to go learn that. That's one, I may not want to learn it in the first place. And sometimes people do it faster and better.
Exactly. Time is money.
It's like, I'm just going to pay you to do that. And so I always tell people, you kind of have money power or time power. And, you get to choose that. So yes, starting out, we may be doing some of these things. But then it's like, how can you leverage, the money that your business is bringing in to reinvest it? And that is in building that team or outsourcing some of the work. So it is so important. And over investing, I always say that was my number one mistake. So I definitely feel you on that. And it's like, I call it the squirrel syndrome. You're like, squirrel. You're like so distracted. You're signing up, not just for like the pay stuff, but the free stuff, right? And it's like,
yes,
people want to tell you all the how to. So you might as well go and invest in a great program and get it. All that. So yes, think about your time and your boundaries and what you really want to know. So that's such great advice. So what is your personal mantra or a motto or saying or quote that you live by?
Yes, so there's a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And so I may be butchering it by a couple of words, but when we are unable to change the situation, we are empowered to change ourselves. So I always think of that because he was going through, he was in a concentration camp, and that's just how he stayed sane through the whole thing, is by being mentally strong. So I just kind of take that as like, all right, not everything will be under my control, but I can control how I react to it. And I think, and as a business owner, like it's going to be some swings and some shifts, and it's just kind of working daily to just keep yourself grounded and keep yourself focused. I'm by no means an expert at it, but I know that's something that, a lot of us do need to get better at.
I actually
Yeah.
love that book. I read that in college, especially during the time when I was like trying to figure out life. And I can't remember the exact quote, but I got something from it where it's like we get to choose our purpose. Like purpose
Mm-hmm.
isn't just something that happens to us,
Yeah.
that we get to choose it. And I always like to add that purpose is going to be different in every season of your life. You may have this overarching thing, but the way it exhibits itself. So like you said, he was in a concentration camp. You could say one of the worst atrocities, right? That we've seen in human history, in addition to slavery of African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Just went into
Yeah.
slavery,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that, they were in these dire circumstances and he chose his purpose, right? He chose his mission. Like you said, he controlled his mindset. And that also reminds me of this book, The Success Principles by Jack Canfield, where he gives this formula that there will be circumstances in our lives. He put that as events, right? And then we always get to control ourselves, which is our reaction to those events. So it's E plus R equals the O, which is outcome. So if you want to change the outcomes in your life, the only factor of this equation that you have control over are your reactions. So as you were saying that, I was like, oh, this is the E plus R equals
Mm-hmm.
O formula. So thank you for sharing that. And, our motto here at Black Women CEO, and I usually say it at the end of the podcast, but we'll just say it now, is power is the ability to create your reality. And that goes very much to what Kimberly just said. Like the one aspect that we can control, right, is our mindset. And then if you want to add the other lesson, Viktor
Mm-hmm.
Frankl, is the mission, right? You can choose your purpose in all circumstances and ultimately like what you focus on, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what you want to get out of it. So that mindset piece is so important. So you shared so many tips and so many wisdom. So y'all make sure you go back. If you didn't take notes, listen again. Right? But Kimberly, how can people find you online and connect with you?
Yeah, so there's two different ways. So first was my company website, Foolishly Creative. So if you're interested in a website, marketing funnel setup, email marketing, or branding, that would be the place to go. We're always taking on new clients, and so we do have discovery calls available. Just check the calendar there under Get Started. And then for me personally, I'm available to train, speak, and teach at events. So that would be my personal website, Kimberly Inez, Inez, and then Mays, my last name Mays, and that would be KimberlyInezMays.com. So there's many ways to get in touch with me. So yeah, either way, and you'll get a response from me.
All right, awesome. Go check out those links so that you can show up powerfully online and tap into Kimberly's Zone of Genius when it comes to all this tech savvy and digital marketing. But thank you so much, Kimberly, for joining us. This was a great podcast interview. And I think once again, you talked about something that we don't ever, or at least hasn't been talked about, which is that introversion and how to succeed as an entrepreneur in that capacity. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. I'll say our motto again. That power is the ability to create your reality. So go forth and be powerful, sisters. And I'll talk to you soon. Peace. Oh, girl, the episode stopped, but the party is not over. I want you to go ahead and subscribe, like, and rate this show. Leave us a comment sharing your takeaways. And when you're done with that, come on over to blackwomanceo.com, join our movement. And when you do that, you'll get the special invitation to join us in our community. Well, I would love to put a face to that name, girl. So this is Quanisha signing off, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Peace and love.